Hi, this is Rick Harsh. I am a writer and also the founder and chief editor of samizdat books. And I'm taking the time here to introduce you to samizdat books because some of you don't know samizdat books. And I would like to see if I can summarize what we are and what we've done and what we do. And one of the reasons is a kind person in Ljubljana the other day made a comment about how I was publishing myself. And that's partly true. But that always sounds bad. No matter how you mean it, it sounds bad. This is my way of publishing myself. Well, it's true. There are about 12 of my books. But let me just show you one book. This book, the Driftless Trilogy, contains my first three books. The Driftless Zone, Billy Verite, and The Sleep of Aborigines. They're sort of a satirical noir. They came out one after another in the 90s. The Driftless Zone sold well enough to pay for my advance, and it also was picked up and published in France. The other two were also published in France when they came out. But the French publisher went bankrupt right after deciding to choose two of these three to become mass market paperbacks to be sold at kiosks and so on. Bad luck. I've always had bad luck with publishing. So these were, genuinely published books before I rescued them, which I did because I started a press. Why did I start a press? Well, because my best book, it's not right in front of me here, or behind me, I should say, or in front of you. I don't know who you are. Who are you? Well, never mind. We'll talk later. I have a book called The Manifold Destiny of Eddie Vegas, and it's not sold by our press because it was bought by Zero Gram Press, a great press that publishes Stephen Moore and has published Alexander Theroux and Jen Craig and many other great writers, and is a great press. And so what happened was that and my beloved monster baseball anti-fascist book, Walk Like a Duck, a season of Little League Baseball in Italy, were due out in 2022, and the press that was going to publish them is run by a guy who finds it easy to lie or hide the truth from his writers. There were 5 separate publication dates for Eddie Vegas, and the last one was in May of 2022, and I set up a review by Chris Villa for May, and I found out in April that the deadline wasn't going to be met, the book wasn't going to be published, and I had enough. And I thought, well, I got a Chris Villa review coming up. That's a valuable promotional tool, and Villa loved the book. So I, in my panic, I borrowed money and published the books here in Slovenia. And I came up with a quick title, samizdat. It was the beginning of the the well-begun first stage of Corona. And samizdat, I used the term samizdat because I wanted to publish my book, Eddie Vegas, in the United States, and if you publish a book once, publishers don't often like to, you know, take it once it's failed somewhere else or whatever. And of course, it was going to fail if I published it myself. Fail to financially, and I like the term samizdat, of course, and that's why our logo has. I don't know if you can get a good look here, but the logo done by Jeff Walton shows someone taking a book out of someone else's pocket or putting it in, because samizdat is under the radar publishing, and it's a term from the Eastern Bloc of Europe. And most countries, I think, used the term samizdat. It's originally was Russian. Basically, it means self-published. And what was self-published was books like The Master and Margarita that were banned and were printed and handed out and spread around in that way. So it also works in the sense that. We need small presses so that some great writers can be published. And I see one right behind me here. João Reis, Bedraggling Grandma with Russian Snow. Most of you probably don't know João Reis because he's a Portuguese writer who, although he's got 3 books in English now, including this one, and this one actually is being published or translated all over the world. Last I heard was Greece and maybe Egypt. I don't know. But Greece for sure. And I don't know, he's probably got at least 15 countries publishing this book now. But not New York Review of Books, which publishes a lot of translated books and means that person has made it. But this is better than most books you can buy at New York Review of Books Classics, NYRB Classics. João Reis is still on the bad luck side of the ledger. But we publish him, and we publish a lot of great books. How did we manage? Well, for one thing, my policy is to do as little as possible as a publisher. And what that means practically is that I don't proofread. The publisher or the writer has to do that. I don't edit. The writer has to do that. And when the writer thinks the book is ready for the public, they work with Zach Tanner usually, or if they have someone else they work with them to typeset the book and get the cover that they want. One of the principles of our press is that the writer does whatever they want. They may not get any money, and a few have gotten royalties, but I don't take royalties myself. Everything I make goes back into publishing more books. Eventually, I'd like to make $700 or so a month to pay my rent in my retirement. That's my goal, my personal goal, my financial personal goal. The goal for the press is to be a writer's press. And what that means, and the reason I thought of doing this today, is that I often read books that we publish after they've been published. I don't have time to read submissions. I don't know how to get around that sometimes because I can't say no. But technically, we don't take submissions. We get a lot of writers referred to us, and a lot of times it's writers who are just fed up with the whole process of trying to get an agent, trying to get published, trying to get out of the cycle of you've published, your book hasn't done well, you're fucked. Which is what happened to me because these didn't make enough money. Billy Verite came out at the same time as a lot of big books and did not get reviewed very much. And the next one, The Sleep of Aborigines, my personal favorite, and I think Bill Clark's personal favorite, W.D. Clark. You get a track record, and in New York they look at that track record. Last I knew, editors had to write this. This is sickening, but editors would have to write a prospectus, a financial report, how the book is going to do financially. What has that got to do with literature? Nothing. It's a nightmare. Agents are now a nightmare. My agent was a sociopath. He was also Mark Danielewski's agent, so he was capable of selling books. But he wanted to start editing my books, and I wouldn't let him. And when I told him, that writers who pretended to appreciate his input were bullshitting him, he dumped me. And that's part of the story of why I don't have an agent. And it affected me quite a bit. I tried to get agents a couple of times, but it's a demoralizing thing. You don't talk to an agent anymore. You talk to someone who works for the agent. And I found out that they just don't understand books. They don't understand literature. And of course, that's a blanket statement, but it's probably nearly accurate as a blanket statement. I was thinking of looking over here. Oh, yeah. Okay, so the latest books I got are books by accomplished and known writers. Gary Amdahl was referred to our press and decided to go ahead and go with us. Across My Big Brass Bed has been published before, not with this cover, and it's a very highly regarded book. And Mark Nash from England, I hadn't heard of him, but one of our readers connected me to Mark Nash, and I didn't feel the need to read either of these books. This guy was, Gary Amdahl, was came at the suggestion of W.D. Clark, a Canadian writer who is one of the best Canadian writers, but is not received as one of the best Canadian writers. So I got so much to read now. I'm reading my personal favorite accomplishment as a publisher, finally getting the great Roberto Arlt properly published in his novel, The Seven Madmen and the Flamethrowers, in one volume, and with a lot of good commentary, and printed the way that Arlt wanted the book printed. And I'm reading this with a friend, and I'm reading it very slowly because I'm just in wonderment at the writing. I read this 30 years ago and was really taken by it. But I only read The Seven Madmen because the other half wasn't available until a working man named Larry Riley taught himself Spanish so he could translate the second part of this, The Flamethrowers. We have The Flamethrowers in a beautiful volume that now, unless you've only read The Seven Madmen and want to read The Flamethrowers, which is now reduced to 10 euros from 20, we have lots of copies of these. They're beautiful copies, and I'm not trying to sell it right now. I don't give a damn if we sell them. I'm mostly concerned with this book, and it's doing very well, and it should do well. It's one of the top most important books of the 20th century. And that, if you don't believe that, if you think it's hyperbolic, ask any Latin American writer, and they will tell you, yeah, absolutely. Roberto Arlt. It's an amazing book, and I've done a couple of YouTubes about it. I'm not going to do another one right now. I'm just going to say that I'm reading it right now. I'm only on page 100, and I have all these other books I need to read, and a few of them I bought last week in Ljubljana, and I don't know when I'm going to get to them, because I'm still way behind in. Well, I haven't. What did we? Let's see. I read a pastoral, but there are a number of our books that I haven't read yet, and I did read Filthy Synecdoche. This is another thing that we do. This is Ben Lieberman's. He's not even on the cover. It just says Filthy Synecdoche. Not my business. It's up to the writer and Zach Tanner or whoever else does the cover. And somehow they decided he wouldn't be on the cover. But you can find his name. You just have to look inside, and you'll see Filthy Synecdoche. And then you'll see Filthy Synecdoche, a novel by Ben Lieberman. Ben happened to catch me at a good time when I was editing something that'll go into our giallo, that's Italian noir or crime. We're going to have a giallo series. And the first person, Stephen Hayes, has I've edited one of his books, and I'm going to edit another one. Good hardcore Hamilton, Ontario. Have you heard of the place? I hadn't. Very good, typical noir crime, and this came in at the same time, and I read a few sentences sometimes from someone, and I read this guy, and I thought, oh, this guy can write. And so I said, just keep sending me stuff. And I did some, I don't know, proofing. I don't think editing would be the word. I don't like to edit. I can proof. And I proofed. But I found that, this is really a good writer and needs to be published. So what we do is we try to publish people who deserve to be published. One of my favorites in these was in this area was Orbo, Luke Dellin. This guy has got the touch. He's got the Vanagoutian touch. Although I wouldn't take that comparison too far. But this is a great book, and he sent it to me, and he published it himself and sent it to me, and I immediately thought, God, this guy can write. He's got it just naturally, and so we have it. And another one was Purple West. I read this after we published it. Zach Tanner, trusted writer and everything to the press. His official title in our organization is the Data Quality Control. But he does all kinds of things, including write books. He's got a big one coming out soon. And Purple West was one that I hadn't read. And but the guy can write. And it's a little bit of a modern thriller. And when I say modern thriller, I usually mean a book that's concerned with today. And a lot of times that falls into speculative fiction or dystopian fiction. And this does a really good job of dealing with that scenario, with a scenario that's a couple of years down the road, Not many, but a couple. We also were lucky enough to find Chandler Brossard unpublished. Chandler Brossard was another of the great 20th century writers, but when he really got wild and he really got great, he was panned by idiots. And one of them was Anatole Broyard, whoever the fuck he really was, a spy, I think. Anyway, a shithead. And Wake Up, We're Almost There. I guess I don't have to show you everything. Do I? I have one right here. Read Stephen Moore, his chapter on Brossard in what was the name of that? It was another, I think, Dylan reference. He was, he wrote the history of the novel, alternative history of the novel, 2 volumes, but that only took him to 1800. And how do you write the history of the novel from 1800 to current? Instead, he put out My Back Pages. That's the Dylan reference, yeah. My Back Pages, it was called. And there's a chapter on Brossard, and I read it, and I thought, gotta read this guy, Brossard. I had never heard of him. And he was out of print. And I contacted Stephen Moore, and he was a good friend of Brossard's, or a friend of Brossard's. And he helped us get all of the books, and the family went along, and so now we have 5 of Brossard's books, and this one especially is amazing. Another one that's giant is As the Wolf Howls at My Door. Another thing you might notice, we have some really good covers, and we just lost our printer. They lost the financial duel with life. It just really sucks. We're looking for a new printer right now. And this guy, Brossard, is a life changer in the way that Henry Miller was. And I'm not saying he wrote like Henry Miller, but he wrote with the freedom and the refusal of discipline of Henry Miller. And so we have a lot of really great literature here. But I'm most happy with things like Ben Lieberman coming out and getting his first book out. But particularly David Vardaman. Vardaman is a genius, and we've got 4 of his books out. And the best short piece I've ever read is the novella called Easter in Suggestions Diaboliques, and available only here, just like most of what I'm talking about. That's the story of Corona Samizdat Press. They're keeping me from reading anything but my own published books. The books that I'm publishing for them, for my writers or our writers. And what we're getting is people who just are sick. They're fed up. From Canada, we've got 4 writers who are all extremely good. W.D. Clark, I mentioned. Lee Thompson, like a minor celebrity, a local legend, a cult writer or whatever. Jeff Bursey wrote an amazing book which would cause one to question the difference between similitude and verisimilitude, between satire and reporting, and an amazing book. I don't remember the title now, but But now we've got a book of criticism by Jeff Bursey, one of Canada's best writers, a great bit of fun postmodern fiction called Unidentified Man at Left of Photo. And we have a book of short stories that are all very highly regarded. They're coming to us. Why? Because the writer gets to do what they want, but also because they're not vetted here. We don't have one big shot at the head of the press. I'm at the head of the press, and I am far from a big shot. And I don't say no for financial reasons. I don't often even say no. Don't take that as reason to send me anything, okay? Because I'm buried, and I'm trying to write my own books. But even reading what I want to read is becoming impossible. I mean, I've got to read Nash and Amdahl, and I want to when I see what people say about them, when I look at the books themselves. Nash's book, I often joke about pastels. I'm not really even joking. I'm sick of pastel covers. And now I've published one, our first pastel, I think. But it's called The Death of the Author in Triplicate, and it's fascinating and brilliant. I've read like 10 or 11 pages, and I already know that. So this is the story of Corona Samizdat Press. And if you have any questions, or if you think I left something out, or if you think I was repetitive, fuck off. No, I'm joking. Let me just bring you closer so I can say goodbye. Goodbye. Thanks for listening. Thanks for whatever. Bye.